My name is Rebecca Mitchell, and I'm 27 years old. 3 days ago, I received the most devastating text message of my entire life. It came from our family group chat, sent by my older brother Nathan. "We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely." Just like that, my entire world crumbled. I stared at my phone in my Dallas apartment, reading those words over and over, trying to understand what I'd done wrong. I thought I was the golden child, the successful one they were proud of. I was so wrong. Before we dive into this unbelievable story of betrayal and revenge, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you think family drama can't get any crazier than this, you're about to be proven wrong. Hit that like button and subscribe because this story has more twists than a soap opera, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next when I discover the shocking truth behind my family's sudden rejection. Growing up as the youngest Mitchell child should have been a blessing, but looking back now, I realize it was actually a carefully constructed trap that would eventually destroy me. My parents, Margaret and Robert Mitchell, built their fortune in Dallas real estate development over 30 years. They owned half the commercial properties downtown and lived in a mansion that could house 3 families comfortably. Money was never an issue in our household, but love and genuine connection always seemed just out of reach. I had 2 older siblings who seemed to have it all figured out. Nathan, 32, was the golden boy who followed our father into law, eventually becoming a partner at one of Dallas's most prestigious firms. He had this way of commanding attention whenever he walked into a room, with his perfect smile and expensive suits that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Then there was Claire, 29, who became a doctor just like our mother always dreamed. She specialized in pediatric surgery and worked at the Children's Hospital downtown. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American success story. But I was determined to prove I belonged in this family of overachievers. I threw myself into academics with a desperation that my siblings never seemed to need. While they effortlessly excelled, I stayed up until 3 in the morning studying, making color-coded notes, and rewriting essays until they were perfect. My hard work paid off when I earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University, majoring in marketing and communications. 4 years later, I graduated summa cum laude and landed a position at Henderson Marketing Group, one of Chicago's top agencies. By 25, I was the youngest senior account executive in the company's history. I managed campaigns for Fortune 500 companies, pulling in 7-figure contracts that made headlines in industry publications. My success felt like validation that I finally belonged at the Mitchell family table. When I got engaged to David Carson 6 months ago, I thought I'd reached the pinnacle of what my parents expected from me. David was everything they could want in a son-in-law: successful architect, from a good family, financially stable, and most importantly, he adored me. The night before that devastating text message, we'd all gathered at my parents' house for dinner to celebrate Nathan's promotion to senior partner. I remember arriving with a bottle of Dom Perignon that cost $400, wanting to contribute something special to the celebration. The evening seemed perfect on the surface. We laughed about old family stories, discussed David's latest architectural project, and my parents seemed genuinely proud when I mentioned my recent promotion to VP of Client Relations. But now, replaying every moment of that dinner in my mind, I can see the subtle signs I completely missed. There were whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when I approached. Claire kept checking her phone with a secretive smile. Nathan and my father exchanged meaningful glances across the table. My mother seemed distant, almost sad, when she looked at me. I thought she was just getting emotional about Nathan's success, but I realize now she already knew what was coming. The most chilling moment happened when I excused myself to use the bathroom. As I walked back toward the dining room, I heard Nathan's voice carrying from the kitchen, "Are you sure about this? Once we do it, there's no going back." My father's response was too quiet to hear, but Nathan's next words stopped me cold. "She's going to be devastated, but it's for the best." I convinced myself they were talking about selling one of their properties or some business decision. I never imagined they were planning to cut me out of their lives entirely. That night, I drove home to my downtown apartment feeling like I finally had everything I'd ever wanted. A loving family, a successful career, a wonderful fiancé, and the respect I'd worked so hard to earn. I fell asleep planning my wedding, thinking about the speech my father would give, imagining how proud my siblings would be to stand beside me. 24 hours later, those dreams would be shattered by a single text message that would expose just how naive I'd been about the people I loved most. The first thing I did after receiving that text was call Nathan directly. His phone went straight to voicemail, which was strange because he always answered my calls. I tried Claire next, then my parents, then Nathan again. Every single number went directly to voicemail, and when I checked, I realized they'd all blocked me simultaneously. The coordination was chilling. This wasn't a spontaneous decision born from emotion, it was a calculated, planned execution. My hands were shaking as I got dressed and drove to my parents' house in Highland Park. I'd been there hundreds of times, had my own garage remote and security code, but when I arrived, everything had changed. The iron gates that usually opened automatically for my car remained locked. I could see the security cameras that normally tracked toward approaching vehicles had been turned to face the wall. Someone had systematically removed my access to the family home, probably while we were having dinner the night before. I sat in my car outside those gates for 2 hours, calling their names, honking my horn, trying anything to get their attention. Neighbors started staring from their perfectly manicured lawns, probably wondering if I was having some kind of breakdown. Maybe I was. Finally, I gave up and drove to David's architecture firm downtown. If anyone would have answers, it would be my fiancé. David was in his corner office reviewing blueprints when I burst through his door, probably looking as frantic as I felt. His face showed genuine confusion when I explained what had happened. He pulled out his phone and tried calling my family members himself, getting the same voicemail responses. "Maybe there's been some kind of misunderstanding," he said, but I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. He was already wondering what I might have done to deserve this treatment. That evening, I met my best friend Sarah at our usual coffee shop near the University District. Sarah and I had been friends since college, and she knew my family almost as well as I did. She'd been to countless holiday dinners, birthday parties, and family gatherings over the years. If anyone would have insight into what might have triggered this sudden rejection, it would be her. But Sarah's reaction shocked me more than my family's text message had. When I told her what happened, she didn't look surprised. She looked guilty. "Rebecca," she said slowly, stirring her latte with nervous precision, "Claire has been asking me questions about you for weeks. Really specific questions about college, your first job, your dating history. I thought she was maybe planning some kind of surprise for your engagement, but now." She trailed off, avoiding my eyes. My blood ran cold as Sarah described the interrogation my sister had subjected her to. Claire had wanted to know about my college roommate situation, any academic difficulties I might have had, whether I'd ever been in financial trouble, if I'd had any dramatic breakups or professional conflicts. "She kept pushing for details about things that went wrong in your life," Sarah explained. "She seemed disappointed when I told her you'd always been pretty straight-laced." The mention of college troubles brought back a memory I'd tried to bury for years. During my junior year, my roommate Jessica had been caught plagiarizing a major research paper. She was on scholarship like me, and getting expelled would have meant losing everything. The Academic Integrity Board was ready to throw the book at her when I made a split-second decision that I thought was noble at the time. I went to the dean and claimed responsibility for the plagiarism, saying I'd pressured Jessica into letting me copy her work. I was suspended for 1 semester instead of expelled, and Jessica got to keep her scholarship and graduate on time. Only 3 people ever knew the real truth: Jessica, me, and my boyfriend at the time, Marcus Thompson. I made them both swear never to tell anyone, and as far as I knew, they'd kept that promise. Jessica went on to medical school and became a successful doctor. Marcus and I broke up messily 2 months later when I caught him cheating with another girl in our friend group. Sitting in that coffee shop with Sarah, I felt the first tendrils of real fear creeping up my spine. Someone had been systematically investigating my past, looking for ammunition to use against me. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Someone in my family had hired a private investigator or found some other way to dig up buried secrets from my college years. But who would do such a thing, and why now? It took me 3 days of obsessive internet searching, but I finally found what I was looking for. Claire had always been careless about her privacy settings on social media, and buried deep in her Instagram photos was a picture that made my heart stop. It was taken at an upscale restaurant downtown, and she was sitting across from a man I recognized immediately, Marcus Thompson, my ex-boyfriend from college. The photo was posted 6 weeks ago with the caption "Catching up with an old friend." But Marcus wasn't Claire's friend, they'd barely met during our brief college relationship. I'd introduced them once at a party, and Claire had been dismissive and rude to him. There was absolutely no reason for them to be catching up unless it had something to do with me. I spent hours digging through Marcus's social media profiles and professional information. He'd become a private investigator after college, specializing in what his website called comprehensive background research and verification services. His client testimonials boasted about his ability to uncover hidden information that other investigators missed. Reading his professional biography made me physically sick as I realized what had been happening. Claire had hired my ex-boyfriend to destroy my life. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My own sister, the person who'd taught me how to braid my hair and helped me with my homework throughout childhood, had systematically planned my destruction. But why? What had I ever done to Claire that would warrant this level of betrayal? I called in sick to work and spent the entire day reconstructing the timeline of Claire's jealousy and resentment. Looking back through our text conversations and family interactions, I could see the signs I'd been too blind to notice. Claire's enthusiasm for my engagement had always felt forced. She asked strange questions about David's previous relationships and seemed particularly interested in whether he'd dated anyone else in our social circle. That's when I remembered something that made everything click into place. 3 years ago, at Nathan's birthday party, I'd met David for the first time. He was Claire's guest, and she'd introduced him as someone she was getting to know better. They'd seemed cozy together, laughing at inside jokes and standing close enough that I assumed they were dating. But by the end of the evening, David was asking for my number instead of paying attention to Claire. Claire had watched the man she was interested in choose her younger sister over her. For 3 years, she'd smiled at family dinners while David and I fell in love, got engaged, and planned our future together. She'd been the perfect sister, the supportive older sibling, while secretly nurturing a resentment that had now exploded into full-scale warfare. But Claire wasn't working alone. The coordination of the family's rejection, the simultaneous blocking of my phone number, the calculated timing of everything suggested a broader conspiracy. I needed to understand who else was involved and what kind of evidence Marcus had fabricated to convince my parents that I was worthy of complete abandonment. I created a fake email account and contacted Marcus's private investigation business, pretending to be a potential client interested in his services. His response was professional but creepy, detailing his ability to uncover hidden truths about people's pasts. He mentioned recent success stories involving family members who discovered shocking information about siblings they thought they knew. The pieces were falling into place, but I still didn't understand the full scope of the conspiracy. How had Claire convinced Nathan and my parents to go along with this plan? What kind of evidence had Marcus manufactured that was convincing enough to make my family abandon me without even hearing my side of the story? I was about to discover that Claire's betrayal was just the beginning of a much deeper and more devastating plot that involved people I trusted with my life. I knew confronting Marcus directly was dangerous, but I needed to understand exactly what kind of lies he'd told my family. His private investigation office was in a generic business complex near the airport, the kind of place that screamed shady operations to anyone paying attention. I spent an hour in the parking lot working up the courage to go inside, knowing this conversation could expose me to even more manipulation. Marcus looked exactly the same as he had in college. Average height, sandy brown hair, and that cocky smirk that had once charmed me but now made my skin crawl. His office was decorated with certificates and awards that were probably fake, designed to impress clients who needed someone to dig up dirt on their enemies. He seemed genuinely surprised to see me but recovered quickly, gesturing for me to sit in the chair across from his oversized desk. "Rebecca," he said with false warmth, "what a pleasant surprise. Though I have to say, your timing is interesting." The way he emphasized the word timing made it clear he knew exactly why I was there. This wasn't a coincidence or a social call, it was the confrontation he'd probably been expecting since Claire hired him. "You know why I'm here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My sister hired you to investigate me, and now my entire family has cut off all contact. I want to know what lies you told them." Marcus leaned back in his chair with a satisfied expression that made me want to slap him. "Lies? Rebecca, I'm hurt. I pride myself on providing my clients with nothing but verified, documented facts. If your family chose to distance themselves from you based on the information I uncovered, perhaps you should examine your own choices rather than attacking my professional integrity." He opened a thick folder on his desk and began pulling out documents that looked official and damning. "Let's see," he said with mock concern, "we have evidence of academic dishonesty during your college years, financial irregularities in your charitable work, and patterns of deceptive behavior in your personal relationships. Your sister was quite shocked to learn about the real Rebecca Mitchell." My heart was pounding as I listened to him casually destroy my reputation with lies dressed up as facts. The academic dishonesty claim was based on the plagiarism incident I'd taken blame for, but Marcus had twisted it to make it look like I was the one who'd cheated and manipulated Jessica into covering for me. He'd somehow obtained copies of academic records that appeared to support his version of events. "The charitable work allegations are particularly damning," Marcus continued, clearly enjoying my distress. "Embezzlement from cancer research donations? That's federal crime territory, Rebecca. Your family was horrified to learn their daughter had been stealing money meant to help dying children." I stared at him in shock. "That's completely fabricated. I've never embezzled anything in my life." "The bank records say otherwise," he replied smoothly, sliding a stack of financial documents across the desk. "Suspicious transfers, unexplained cash deposits, charity funds mysteriously disappearing after events you organized. It's all very thoroughly documented." The papers looked legitimate, with official bank letterheads and transaction records that seemed to prove I'd been skimming money from charitable events. But I knew they had to be forgeries because I'd never done any of the things they purported to show. Marcus had either hacked into real bank systems and altered records, or he'd created completely fabricated documents that looked authentic enough to fool my family. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this to me? What did I ever do to you that warranted this level of destruction?" Marcus's expression shifted from smug satisfaction to genuine anger. "What did you do to me? Rebecca, you destroyed my reputation in college. When you exposed my relationship with Sarah to our entire friend group, you made me look like a cheating bastard who couldn't be trusted. Do you have any idea how that affected my life?" I remembered the incident he was referring to, but his version was completely distorted. I'd caught him making out with Sarah Patterson at a party while we were supposedly in an exclusive relationship. When I confronted him about it, he'd tried to gaslight me into believing I'd misunderstood what I saw. I told our mutual friends what had happened because I was hurt and needed support, not because I wanted to destroy his reputation. "You cost me several relationships after that," Marcus continued. "Women in our social circle wouldn't date me because they thought I was a serial cheater. I lost job opportunities because people talked about my character issues in professional settings. You ruined my life with your vindictive gossip, and now I'm simply returning the favor." The depth of his delusion was staggering. In his mind, I was the villain who destroyed his life by refusing to stay silent about his infidelity. He'd spent 6 years nursing this grievance, building his private investigation business with the specific goal of someday getting revenge on me. Claire had simply provided him with the perfect opportunity to implement a plan he'd probably been fantasizing about for years. The beauty of this situation, Marcus said, pulling out another folder, is that I don't even have to rely entirely on fabricated evidence. Your college roommate Jessica has been very cooperative in providing testimony about your true character during those years. My blood turned to ice. Jessica and I had lost touch after college, but I'd always assumed we'd parted on good terms. She'd been grateful that I'd taken responsibility for her plagiarism and saved her academic career. The idea that she would betray me now, after all these years, seemed impossible. Marcus handed me a typed statement that appeared to be signed by Jessica Hamilton, MD. In it, she claimed that I had been the one who'd committed plagiarism and forced her to take initial responsibility. According to her statement, I'd threatened to expose some unspecified secret about her personal life unless she agreed to protect me. The document made me look like a manipulative sociopath who'd destroyed an innocent person's academic standing for my own benefit. Jessica was very forthcoming once I explained the legal implications of being an accessory to academic fraud, Marcus said. Turns out she's been carrying guilt about lying for you all these years. She was quite relieved to finally tell the truth. I knew it was a lie. Jessica would never have said these things willingly, which meant Marcus had coerced or threatened her somehow. But proving that would require resources and legal expertise I didn't have. He'd created a web of false evidence so comprehensive that refuting it would be nearly impossible. Your brother Nathan has been particularly helpful in making sure this evidence would hold up in court, Marcus added casually, as if he was commenting on the weather. His legal expertise has been invaluable in formatting these documents properly. The revelation that Nathan was actively involved in this conspiracy hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just Claire's jealousy or Marcus's revenge, my own brother was helping them destroy me. The three people I'd trusted most in the world had formed an alliance dedicated to my complete destruction, and they'd done it with such calculated precision that I had no idea how to fight back. The discovery that Nathan was involved in the conspiracy against me felt like a betrayal worse than all the others combined. Nathan had been my protector growing up, the big brother who scared away bullies and helped me with math homework. The idea that he was actively participating in my destruction seemed impossible, but I needed to understand why. I spent 2 days conducting surveillance outside Nathan's law firm, watching his routine and trying to find an opportunity to confront him privately. What I discovered during those long hours of observation shocked me more than anything Marcus had revealed. Nathan looked terrible. His usually immaculate appearance had deteriorated. His expensive suits were wrinkled, he'd lost weight, and he had the hollow-eyed look of someone who wasn't sleeping. On Thursday evening, I followed him from his office to a sports bar downtown that seemed like an unlikely place for Dallas's newest senior partner to unwind. I watched through the window as he sat alone at the bar, drinking steadily and staring at his phone with an expression of pure desperation. This wasn't the successful, confident brother I'd known my entire life. This was someone running from something, and I needed to find out what. I waited until Nathan left the bar and followed him home to his luxury condo in Uptown. Instead of confronting him directly, I decided to do some investigating of my own. If Nathan was involved in this conspiracy, there had to be a reason beyond simple family loyalty. People like my brother didn't risk their professional reputations for emotional revenge, they did it when they had something significant to gain or lose. The next morning, I called Nathan's law firm pretending to be a potential client interested in estate planning services. The receptionist informed me that Mr. Mitchell was taking a temporary leave of absence to deal with personal matters, but they could refer me to another partner. This was strange because Nathan had just been promoted and would normally be eager to bring in new business. I spent the weekend researching Nathan's recent professional activities and financial situation. What I found buried in public records and court documents made everything suddenly make sense. Nathan's gambling addiction wasn't just a personal problem, it had become a massive financial crisis that threatened to destroy his career and land him in federal prison. 3 months ago, Nathan had been assigned to manage a class action settlement involving pharmaceutical companies and patient compensation. The settlement fund contained over $2 million that was supposed to be distributed to victims over a 12-month period. But bank records I was able to access through my marketing contacts showed suspicious transfers from the settlement account to offshore gambling sites. Nathan had been systematically embezzling from his clients' settlement funds to cover his gambling losses, moving money through a complex series of international transfers that he probably thought were untraceable. He'd stolen over $300,000 from people who were already suffering from corporate negligence, using their compensation to fund his addiction. But the most damaging discovery was Nathan's connection to Marcus's private investigation business. Bank records showed regular payments from Nathan's personal account to Marcus's company, totaling nearly $50,000 over the past 2 months. Nathan wasn't just participating in the conspiracy against me, he was funding it. I finally understood Nathan's motivation. Our parents had been planning to invest heavily in my new marketing firm, potentially transferring millions of dollars in assets that Nathan was counting on for his inheritance. If I was disgraced and cut off from the family, those funds would remain in the estate Nathan expected to eventually inherit. More importantly, the family's attention would be focused on my scandal rather than his own criminal activities. Nathan had used his legal expertise to help Marcus create bulletproof fabricated evidence that could withstand scrutiny from law enforcement. The documents were formatted according to federal standards, notarized properly, and cross-referenced with legitimate databases in ways that would fool most investigators. My brother had essentially weaponized his professional knowledge to destroy his own sister. The final piece of evidence I needed came from Nathan's legal assistant, who recognized me from family photos in his office. She mentioned how stressed Nathan had been lately, especially since that private investigator had been calling the office constantly. "Mr. Mitchell seems terrified of that man," she said. "Every time he calls, your brother locks his door and speaks in whispers." I realized Marcus wasn't just Nathan's co-conspirator, he was his blackmailer. Marcus had discovered Nathan's embezzlement and was using it as leverage to force his participation in the conspiracy against me. Nathan wasn't just helping Marcus voluntarily, he was being coerced into destroying me to protect himself from prosecution. This revelation changed everything. Nathan was a victim of Marcus's manipulation, just like I was. But he'd chosen to sacrifice me rather than face the consequences of his own crimes. He'd let his gambling addiction and financial desperation turn him into the kind of person who would destroy his own sister to save himself. I confronted Nathan that evening at his condo, armed with printouts of his financial records and evidence of his embezzlement. When he opened the door and saw my face, he literally stumbled backward as if I were a ghost. He looked even worse up close, unshaven, trembling, with the hollow stare of someone who'd been living in constant fear. "I know everything," I said simply, walking past him into his living room. "The gambling, the embezzlement, Marcus's blackmail. I know why you helped them destroy me." Nathan collapsed onto his couch and put his head in his hands. For several minutes, he didn't speak, just sat there shaking while I waited for him to find the courage to admit what he'd done. When he finally looked up at me, there were tears in his eyes. "I never meant for it to go this far," he whispered. "Marcus said he just needed some legal formatting help, that it was about protecting the family from your poor choices. I didn't know he was planning to fabricate evidence or that Claire was involved. By the time I realized what was really happening, he had enough evidence of my embezzlement to send me to prison for 20 years. Nathan's confession confirmed what I'd suspected, but hearing it from him still felt like a knife to the heart. My brother had sold me out to protect himself, and now my entire family believed I was a criminal based on lies he'd helped create. The 3 people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had conspired to destroy my life, and they'd done it with such calculated precision that I had almost no way to prove my innocence. But I was about to discover that the conspiracy against me went even deeper than I'd imagined. The turning point in my battle against Jessica's manipulation came from the most unexpected source, Bobby's own conscience. Despite months of psychological conditioning, some part of the son I had raised still existed beneath the layers of Jessica's programming. It would take a shocking discovery to bring that part of him back to the surface, but when it happened, everything changed. Marcus had become my most valuable ally in gathering evidence against Jessica. His friendship with Bobby gave him access to information that no one else could obtain, and his genuine love for our family motivated him to take risks that could have destroyed his relationship with Bobby permanently. Marcus had been documenting Jessica's behavior for months, creating a detailed timeline of her manipulation tactics and their effects on Bobby's personality and behavior. Mrs. Thompson, I think I found something that will finally open Bobby's eyes, Marcus said when he called me one evening in February. His voice was tight with excitement and anger. I've been tracking down Jessica's employment history, and I found something she definitely doesn't want Bobby to know about. Marcus had discovered that Jessica's previous job termination involved more than just attempting to manipulate elderly clients. She had been arrested for identity theft and financial fraud, though the charges had eventually been dropped when she agreed to make restitution and leave the state. The arrest record had been sealed as part of her plea agreement, which explained why Bobby's background check before their marriage had turned up clean. More importantly, Marcus had found evidence that Jessica was currently running a similar scheme with another family in a neighboring state. She had been using social media to cultivate relationships with elderly individuals and their adult children, presenting herself as a caring family friend while gathering information about their assets and family dynamics. The pattern was identical to what she had done with our family, suggesting that her victimization of us was just one part of a much larger criminal enterprise. She's not just some woman who fell into bad behavior because of greed, Marcus explained. This is what she does for a living. She's a professional predator who targets families like yours because you have the exact combination of assets, family structure, and emotional vulnerabilities she knows how to exploit. Armed with this information, Linda hired a private investigator named David Chen who specialized in financial fraud cases. David's investigation uncovered a network of accomplices and victims that stretched across multiple states. Jessica and Dorothy had been working together for over 5 years, targeting grieving widows and elderly individuals whose adult children could be manipulated into supporting their schemes. The investigation revealed that Dorothy wasn't just Jessica's mother, she was her business partner in a sophisticated long-term fraud operation. They had successfully stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from previous victims, using a combination of psychological manipulation, legal intimidation, and systematic isolation to gain control over their targets' assets. In most cases, the victims never even realized they had been robbed because the theft was disguised as family financial management or elder care services. The evidence David compiled was overwhelming. Bank records showed suspicious financial transfers, legal documents revealed patterns of manipulated property transfers, and victim testimonies demonstrated identical manipulation tactics across multiple cases. We had enough evidence to not only defend against Jessica's guardianship petition but to file criminal charges for fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. But the most powerful evidence came from technology Jessica didn't know we had access to. The security system Linda had advised me to install had been recording all conversations in my home for weeks. We had captured Jessica and Dorothy discussing their strategies, bragging about their manipulation of Bobby, and planning their next moves against me. The recordings were legal because they were made in my own home, and they provided undeniable proof of their criminal intent. Listen to this, Linda said, playing back a recording from the previous week. Jessica's voice came through clearly as she spoke to Dorothy in my living room while Bobby was in the bathroom. The old woman is tougher than we expected, but Bobby's completely under control now. Once we get the guardianship, we can sell this house and move the assets offshore like we did with the Patterson family in Kansas. The recordings revealed details about their previous crimes, their current strategy against me, and their plans for disposing of my assets once they gained legal control. They had discussed bribing medical professionals to support their competency claims, forging documents to expedite legal proceedings, and using Bobby's emotional manipulation to prevent him from questioning their actions. More importantly, the recordings captured Jessica's true feelings about Bobby and our family. She referred to him as the mark and the useful idiot, describing him as emotionally weak and easy to control. She mocked his devotion to his father's memory, laughed about his tears when discussing our family conflicts, and expressed contempt for his genuine love for both of us. "He's so pathetic," Jessica's voice said on one particularly damning recording. "He actually believes we're doing this to help his mother." Men like Bobby are so desperate to avoid conflict that they'll convince themselves black is white if it means keeping peace in their marriage. He'll support anything we do as long as we frame it as being in Margaret's best interest. Hearing Jessica's cruel assessment of my son's character was painful, but it also gave me hope. If Bobby could hear how she really talked about him when he wasn't present, surely even her manipulation couldn't prevent him from recognizing the truth about her feelings for him. The victim network David had uncovered proved eager to cooperate with our case. 3 families came forward with detailed accounts of Jessica and Dorothy's schemes, providing testimony and documentation that established a clear pattern of criminal behavior. The emotional support from these other victims was invaluable, but their practical assistance in building our case was even more important. Mrs. Patricia Williams, an 80-year-old widow from Kansas, had lost over $200,000 to Jessica's schemes before her daughter finally realized what was happening and intervened. "She destroyed our family for 2 years," Mrs. Williams told me during our phone conversation. "My daughter still feels guilty about the things Jessica convinced her to say and do to me. But Margaret, you have to understand, Jessica is very good at what she does. She makes people believe they're acting out of love when they're really being used as weapons." The psychological evaluation Dr. Mitchell had conducted became even more valuable as we learned about Jessica's history. Dr. Mitchell had actually encountered Jessica's manipulation tactics before, during a previous case involving one of Jessica's earlier victims. She was able to provide expert testimony about the specific psychological techniques Jessica used to control and manipulate her targets. Jessica employs a sophisticated form of psychological manipulation called triangulation, Dr. Mitchell explained during our preparation session. She inserts herself into existing family relationships and then systematically turns family members against each other while positioning herself as the reasonable mediator. It's a technique commonly used by narcissistic predators to gain control over their victims. As we compiled our evidence and prepared for the legal battle ahead, I felt a growing sense of confidence mixed with sadness. We had the proof we needed to expose Jessica's crimes and protect my family from further harm. But I also knew that victory would come at a terrible cost. Bobby would have to confront the reality that the woman he loved had been using him as a tool to destroy his own mother. The psychological damage might be irreparable, even after Jessica's manipulation was exposed. The final piece of our preparation involved setting a trap that would catch Jessica in the act of committing fraud. With David's help, we created an opportunity for Jessica to attempt forgery of legal documents while being recorded by hidden cameras. If she took the bait, we would have her criminal behavior documented beyond any possible denial or explanation. Everything was in place for the confrontation that would either save my family or destroy it permanently. The evidence was overwhelming, the legal strategy was sound, and our allies were committed to seeing justice done. But the success of our plan still depended on Bobby's ability to recognize the truth when he finally saw it clearly. After months of systematic manipulation, would he be able to accept that the woman he loved was actually his enemy? The answer would come sooner than any of us expected, and in a way that none of us had predicted. The trap we set for Jessica was triggered by her own impatience and greed. Linda had deliberately let it slip during a phone conversation she knew was being monitored that I was considering signing a new power of attorney document that would give Bobby temporary control over my finances while I recovered from my recent confusion and disorientation. The bait was irresistible to someone who had been working for months to gain exactly that kind of legal access to my assets. Jessica took the bait within hours. That evening, she convinced Bobby that they needed to act quickly to secure the power of attorney before I changed my mind or fell under the influence of manipulative outside parties who might convince me to resist their help. What Jessica didn't know was that every conversation in my house was being recorded, and David Chen had positioned himself to observe and document whatever action she decided to take. The confrontation began at 7:30 on a cold Thursday evening when Bobby arrived at my house with Jessica and Dorothy in tow. Bobby looked uncomfortable and nervous, but Jessica radiated the confidence of someone who believed victory was finally within reach. Dorothy carried an expensive briefcase that I suspected contained forged legal documents designed to give them immediate control over my assets and decision-making authority. "Mom, we've brought the paperwork we discussed," Bobby said, his voice strained with the effort of maintaining Jessica's narrative while his natural instincts warned him something was wrong. "The attorney Jessica found says we can handle this privately without involving courts or outside authorities. All you have to do is sign these documents, and we can start getting you the help you need." Jessica's smile was predatory as she spread documents across my dining room table. The papers were sophisticated forgeries designed to look like standard estate planning documents while actually transferring comprehensive control over my life to Jessica and Dorothy. They had even included provisions that would allow them to commit me to assisted living facilities without my consent and sell my property to pay for care expenses. "These are just temporary measures, Margaret," Dorothy said with mock concern, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Just until you're feeling more stable and able to make these kinds of complex decisions on your own. We're family now, and family takes care of each other." As I pretended to review the documents, Jessica made the critical error that would destroy her entire scheme. Impatient with my apparent hesitation, she attempted to guide my hand toward the signature line while simultaneously trying to distract me with psychological manipulation. "Margaret, you know Bobby loves you and only wants what's best for you," Jessica said, her voice taking on the hypnotic cadence she used for her most aggressive manipulation attempts. "You can trust us to take care of everything. You won't have to worry about bills or maintenance or any of these complicated adult responsibilities anymore." What Jessica didn't realize was that her attempts to physically guide my hand toward forged documents constituted attempted fraud and elder abuse, and every moment was being captured by multiple hidden cameras. More importantly, her casual reference to relieving me of adult responsibilities revealed her true intention to infantilize and control me rather than provide genuine care or assistance. The critical moment came when I asked to have my attorney review the documents before signing them. Jessica's facade cracked as she realized that legal scrutiny would immediately expose the forged nature of the paperwork. Her response was swift and revealed the criminal desperation underlying her entire scheme. "Absolutely not," Jessica snapped, dropping her sweet persona entirely. "We're not involving any lawyers who don't understand the family dynamics here. These documents are standard forms, and your attorney would just try to complicate things to justify charging you more fees. You need to sign them tonight, Margaret, before you change your mind again." Bobby looked shocked by Jessica's sudden transformation from concerned daughter-in-law to controlling adversary. For the first time in months, I saw doubt creep into his eyes as he witnessed Jessica's true personality emerging under pressure. "Jessica, if these are standard forms, why can't Mom's attorney review them?" Bobby asked, his voice uncertain but showing the first signs of independent thinking I had heard from him in over a year. Jessica's response was a masterclass in manipulation and intimidation. She accused Bobby of betraying their marriage by taking my side against her, threatened to leave him if he didn't support her, and reminded him of all the sacrifices she had supposedly made for our family. When emotional manipulation failed to work, she escalated to direct threats. "Fine, Bobby. If you want to choose your mentally unstable mother over your wife, that's your decision. But when she ends up dead in this house because no one was supervising her care, don't come crying to me about how we should have done something when we had the chance." The combination of Jessica's threats, the obviously forged documents, and the recorded evidence of her attempted fraud created the perfect storm that finally broke through Bobby's psychological conditioning. But the moment that truly opened his eyes came when Dorothy made a critical error that exposed the entire conspiracy. "Jessica, maybe we should just take the documents with us and come back when Margaret is more cooperative," Dorothy suggested, clearly worried about Bobby's growing resistance to their pressure tactics. "No," Jessica said sharply. "We've wasted too much time on this already. The Patterson house sold last week, and we need this income stream secured before the Henderson family figures out what we're doing to them." The casual reference to other victims and financial crimes was exactly what David Chen needed to complete his investigation. But more importantly, it was what Bobby needed to hear to understand that his wife wasn't just manipulative, She was a career criminal who had been using our family as part of a much larger pattern of fraud and exploitation. Bobby's face went white as the implications of Jessica's slip hit him. What Patterson house? What Henderson family? Jessica, what are you talking about? The ensuing confrontation was devastating and cathartic. Dorothy panicked and tried to leave, accidentally spilling the contents of her briefcase and revealing additional forged documents for multiple families. Jessica realized her slip had exposed their entire operation and became desperate to maintain control through increasingly frantic manipulation attempts. Bobby, you don't understand what you're hearing, Jessica said, her voice taking on a pleading quality as she saw her scheme unraveling. Your mother has been recording our private conversations and probably drugging you to make you confused and suspicious. She's trying to destroy our marriage because she can't stand that you love me more than her. But the damage was done. Bobby had heard enough truth to break through the psychological conditioning that had controlled him for months. When Marcus arrived as planned to provide support and additional evidence, Bobby was ready to listen to information about Jessica's criminal background that he would have rejected completely just hours earlier. The final blow came when Linda played selected portions of the recordings that captured Jessica's true feelings about Bobby and our family. Hearing himself described as the useful idiot and pathetically easy to control shattered whatever remained of Bobby's emotional attachment to the woman who had systematically destroyed his relationship with his mother. You never loved me, Bobby said, his voice broken with the weight of understanding how completely he had been used. I was just a way for you to get to my mother's money. Everything we had together was fake. Jessica's response confirmed everything Bobby was beginning to understand about her true nature. Rather than attempting to salvage their relationship or express any genuine emotion, she immediately shifted to threatening him with legal and financial retaliation if he didn't continue to support her schemes. You're going to regret this, Bobby, she said, her voice cold with calculated malice. I know things about you that could destroy your reputation and your career. You'll support me, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of pathetic mama's boy you really are. The woman who had claimed to love my son was now openly threatening to destroy him because he had refused to help her rob his own mother. Even Dorothy looked shocked by Jessica's viciousness as her daughter revealed the depth of her contempt for the family that had welcomed her with open arms. As police officers arrived to arrest Jessica and Dorothy on charges of attempted fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy, I felt a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and hope. The immediate threat was over, but the emotional damage to my family would take much longer to heal. Bobby was free from Jessica's manipulation, but he was also devastated by the realization of how completely he had been used and the role he had played in nearly destroying his relationship with me. The battle was won, but the war for my family's recovery was just beginning. The legal proceedings that followed Jessica's arrest moved with surprising speed once the full scope of her criminal enterprise became clear. The evidence David Chen had compiled, combined with the recorded conversations and testimony from multiple victims across several states, created an overwhelming case that even the most skilled defense attorney couldn't overcome. Jessica's strategy shifted from denial to damage control as she attempted to minimize her culpability by blaming Dorothy for masterminding their schemes. The federal charges were the most serious, as Jessica and Dorothy's crimes had crossed state lines and involved systematic fraud targeting elderly victims. FBI investigators had been tracking similar crimes across the Midwest and were able to link Jessica to at least 8 additional cases dating back over 6 years. The pattern was always the same. Identify vulnerable families with elderly parents and substantial assets, manipulate adult children into providing access, and systematically drain resources while maintaining the facade of providing care and support. Detective Sarah Martinez, who specialized in elder fraud cases, explained the broader implications of Jessica's crimes during her testimony. The defendant represents a growing category of predator that specifically targets the emotional vulnerabilities of grieving families. These criminals are particularly dangerous because they don't just steal money, they destroy family relationships and leave lasting psychological damage that can persist for generations. Jessica's trial revealed shocking details about the sophistication of her operation. She had maintained detailed files on dozens of potential victims, including psychological profiles, financial assessments, and strategic plans for gaining control over their assets. She had studied grief counseling techniques not to help people heal, but to better understand how to exploit their emotional vulnerabilities. She had researched legal loopholes and medical terminology to support her false claims about her victims' mental competency. The most damaging evidence came from Dorothy, who agreed to testify against Jessica in exchange for a reduced sentence. Dorothy revealed that Jessica had been planning our victimization for over a year before even meeting Bobby, identifying our family through social media research and public records about James's death and my real estate business. Bobby hadn't been chosen for love or even convenience. He had been specifically targeted because his profile matched exactly what Jessica needed for her scheme. She said Bobby was perfect because he was emotionally vulnerable after losing his father, financially stable enough to provide access to significant assets, and psychologically weak enough to be easily controlled through manipulation, Dorothy testified, her voice barely audible as she described her daughter's calculated cruelty. The impact of Dorothy's testimony on Bobby was devastating but necessary. He finally understood that every aspect of his relationship with Jessica had been fabricated, from their supposedly accidental meeting at a coffee shop to her carefully crafted personality that perfectly complemented his emotional needs. Even their wedding had been part of Jessica's long-term strategy to gain legal access to our family's assets. Samantha's plea deal required her to provide testimony about her role in the conspiracy and to assist investigators in tracking down additional victims. Her cooperation led to the recovery of stolen assets in multiple cases and helped prosecutors understand the full scope of the criminal organization Jessica had built around her fraud schemes. The financial restitution process was complex but ultimately successful. Jessica and Dorothy had hidden stolen assets in offshore accounts and shell corporations, but forensic accountants were able to trace most of the money and return it to victims. I recovered the funds they had attempted to steal from me, plus damages for the emotional distress and legal expenses their crimes had caused. Bobby's recovery from Jessica's psychological manipulation required extensive therapy and support. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a specialist in trauma and psychological abuse, explained that victims of systematic manipulation often experience symptoms similar to those seen in survivors of domestic violence or cult indoctrination. Bobby struggled with guilt, shame, and self-doubt as he tried to understand how someone he loved had been able to control him so completely. The hardest part for victims is accepting that their emotions were real even though the relationship was fake, Dr. Rodriguez explained during one of our joint counseling sessions. Bobby genuinely loved Jessica and believed he was protecting both of you by supporting her demands. The manipulation was so sophisticated that questioning it would have required him to doubt his own perceptions and emotions. The community response to Jessica's conviction was overwhelmingly supportive. Neighbors who had been influenced by Dorothy's lies about my mental health came forward to apologize and express their admiration for my courage in fighting back against such sophisticated manipulation. My real estate colleagues rallied around me, and several clients specifically requested to work with me because they had heard about my victory over the criminals who had targeted our family. The professional consequences for those who had enabled Jessica's schemes were significant. The attorney who had agreed to file fraudulent guardianship papers was disbarred and faced criminal charges for his role in the conspiracy. Medical professionals who had been bribed to support false competency claims lost their licenses and faced prosecution. The investigation revealed a network of corrupt professionals who had been systematically exploited by Jessica to legitimize her fraudulent activities. Marcus was recognized as a hero by law enforcement for his role in gathering evidence and supporting our family throughout the crisis. His loyalty and courage had been instrumental in exposing Jessica's crimes and protecting other potential victims. The friendship between Marcus and Bobby, which had been strained by Jessica's manipulation, was stronger than ever as they worked together to support Bobby's recovery. The broader impact of the case extended far beyond our family. Jessica's conviction led to changes in state laws regarding elder protection and guardianship proceedings. New requirements for independent psychological evaluations and enhanced penalties for financial exploitation of elderly individuals were implemented as direct results of the evidence presented during the trial. Linda Hartwell used our case as the foundation for a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating families about elder fraud and providing legal support for victims of financial manipulation. The organization has already helped dozens of families recognize and defend against similar schemes, potentially saving millions of dollars in assets and preventing immeasurable emotional damage. The final court hearing, where Jessica was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, provided a sense of closure that I hadn't expected to feel. As she was led away in handcuffs, Jessica showed no remorse for the families she had destroyed or the lives she had damaged. Her only emotion was anger that her victims had been strong enough to fight back and expose her crimes. Bobby and I attended the hearing together, and I saw him truly understand for the first time the magnitude of what Jessica had attempted to do to our family. The woman he had loved was capable of destroying elderly people for financial gain, separating adult children from their parents for profit, and using the legal system as a weapon against vulnerable individuals. "I'm sorry, Mom," Bobby said as we left the courthouse together. "I'm sorry for everything I said and did to support her. I'm sorry for choosing her over you. I'm sorry for not trusting the woman who raised me to have good judgment about the people trying to hurt our family." His apology was genuine and heartfelt, but I knew that words alone wouldn't heal the damage that had been done to our relationship. Rebuilding trust and intimacy would require time, patience, and continued commitment from both of us. The scars left by Jessica's manipulation would fade, but they would never disappear completely. Justice had been served, but the real work of healing our family was just beginning. The year following Jessica's conviction brought profound changes to our family as Bobby and I worked to rebuild the relationship that had been systematically destroyed by her manipulation. The process was neither quick nor easy, but it was ultimately transformative in ways that neither of us had expected. Through therapy, honest conversation, and shared commitment to healing, we discovered strengths in our family bond that even Jessica's sophisticated psychological warfare couldn't permanently damage. Bobby's journey to recovery began with accepting full responsibility for his actions during Jessica's manipulation campaign. Rather than simply blaming his behavior on her psychological conditioning, he acknowledged that he had made choices that hurt me deeply and violated the values his father and I had worked to instill in him. This accountability was painful but necessary for rebuilding trust between us. "I keep trying to understand how I could have said those things to you about Dad," Bobby told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings that had become a cornerstone of our healing process. "Even under Jessica's influence, I knew those words would hurt you. I chose to say them anyway because it felt easier than standing up to her. That's on me, not just on her manipulation." Dr. Rodriguez helped us understand that healing from systematic psychological abuse requires both individual recovery and relationship rebuilding. Bobby needed to regain confidence in his own judgment and decision-making abilities, while I needed to learn to trust him again despite the pain his choices had caused. The process involved setbacks and difficult conversations, but also moments of connection that reminded us why our relationship had been worth fighting for. The practical aspects of rebuilding our family life included establishing new boundaries and communication patterns that would protect us from future manipulation while allowing genuine intimacy to flourish. Bobby moved back into his apartment but spent significant time at my house, helping with maintenance projects and gradually reclaiming his place in James's study where we would often sit together reading or talking about his father's memory. One of the most healing experiences came when Bobby asked me to help him understand his father's poetry, something Jessica had convinced him was morbid obsession with the past that prevented healthy emotional processing. As we read James's poems together, Bobby reconnected with memories of his father that Jessica's manipulation had taught him to dismiss as unhealthy attachments to grief. "Dad wrote this one about watching me play baseball when I was 8, Bobby said, his voice thick with emotion as he held one of his father's notebooks. "Jessica told me that dwelling on these memories was keeping me from being fully present in my marriage. But reading this now, I remember how proud he was of me, how much he loved being my father. How could remembering that love ever be unhealthy?" The community response to our family's recovery was overwhelmingly supportive. Neighbors who had witnessed Jessica's public manipulation during the anniversary party expressed admiration for our courage in fighting back and rebuilding our relationship. Several families reached out to share their own experiences with manipulative in-laws or family members, creating a network of support that helped normalize our experience and reduce the shame Bobby felt about being victimized. My real estate career flourished as colleagues and clients were inspired by the story of how I had stood firm against such sophisticated manipulation. I became an unofficial advocate for other elderly individuals facing family financial abuse, using my experience to help them recognize warning signs and access legal resources for protection. The sense of purpose that came from helping other families gave deeper meaning to the pain our family had endured. Linda Hartwell's nonprofit organization grew rapidly, with our case serving as the centerpiece of educational programs for seniors, adult children, and legal professionals. Bobby began volunteering with the organization, sharing his perspective as someone who had been used as a weapon against his own parent. His willingness to discuss his experience publicly helped other families understand how good people could be manipulated into participating in elder abuse without recognizing what they were doing. The relationship between Bobby and Marcus was also restored and strengthened through their shared experience of fighting Jessica's manipulation. Marcus had risked his friendship to protect our family, and Bobby's gratitude for that loyalty created a deeper bond between them. Marcus became a regular presence at our family dinners, often bringing dates who were amazed by the close relationship he maintained with his best friend's mother. I learned something important during this whole nightmare, Marcus told me one evening as we prepared dinner together while Bobby was running errands. Real love means protecting people even when they don't want to be protected, even when they're angry at you for trying. Jessica used Bobby's love against both of you, but real love, like what you and Bobby have, survives even the worst manipulation. The financial recovery from Jessica's attempted theft allowed me to make improvements to my home that had been delayed during the crisis. But rather than simply restoring what had been damaged, Bobby and I decided to make changes that would better accommodate our evolving relationship. We converted the guest room into a comfortable space where Bobby could stay when he wanted to spend extended time at the house, and we updated James's study to include a comfortable reading area where we could spend time together. The most significant milestone in our healing journey came on the first anniversary of Jessica's arrest, when Bobby asked me to help him plan a memorial service for his father that would celebrate James's life and values rather than simply mourning his death. The service brought together friends and family members who shared memories of James's kindness, integrity, and devotion to family. Many people commented on how much Bobby resembled his father, not just in appearance but in the character traits that Jessica's manipulation had temporarily obscured. "Dad would have been proud of how you fought for our family," Bobby said as we stood together at James's grave after the memorial service. "He would have been ashamed of how I acted, but he would have been proud of how you never gave up on me even when I gave up on myself." The lessons we learned from our experience extend far beyond our individual family situation. The sophistication of modern psychological manipulation, particularly when it targets vulnerable family dynamics, requires new awareness and protective strategies for all families dealing with grief, major life changes, or financial transitions. Educational programs, legal protections, and community support networks are essential tools for protecting families from predators who exploit love and trust for criminal gain. Dr. Rodriguez emphasized that recovery from systematic manipulation requires ongoing vigilance and self-awareness. "The techniques Jessica used are becoming more common and more sophisticated," she explained during our final family therapy session. "The best protection is education, communication, and maintaining strong support networks that can provide outside perspective when family dynamics become unhealthy." As I write this story, 2 years have passed since Jessica's conviction, and Bobby and I have built a relationship that is stronger and more honest than what we had before her manipulation began. We've learned to communicate more directly about difficult topics, to question decisions that seem to benefit one family member at the expense of another, and to seek outside perspective when internal family dynamics become complex or emotionally charged. The house that Jessica tried to steal from me has become a gathering place for the extended chosen family that includes Marcus, Linda, Dr. Rodriguez, and other friends and colleagues who supported us through our crisis. James's study, which was the initial target of Jessica's manipulation, now serves as a library and meeting space for Linda's nonprofit organization, ensuring that the room continues to serve our family's values of education, justice, and service to others. Bobby recently started dating someone new, a teacher named Sarah who knew our story before they met and understood the importance of transparency and family relationships in building healthy partnerships. Sarah's genuine respect for our family bond and her own close relationship with her parents provided reassurance that Bobby had learned to recognize and value authentic love rather than manipulative control. The question I'm asked most frequently by other families facing similar manipulation is whether the pain and damage caused by the experience was worth the ultimate outcome. The answer is complex because the alternative, surrendering to Jessica's schemes, would have resulted in far greater long-term damage to our family and to other victims she would have continued to target. Fighting back against sophisticated manipulation requires courage, resources, and support that many families don't have access to. The legal and emotional costs are significant, and the outcome isn't guaranteed. But the alternative, allowing predators to destroy families and steal the resources that elderly individuals worked their entire lives to accumulate, is unacceptable for anyone who values justice and family integrity. The most important lesson from our experience is that love and family bonds, even when severely damaged by manipulation, can be restored through honest communication, professional support, and mutual commitment to healing. Jessica's greatest mistake was underestimating the fundamental strength of the relationship between a mother and son who genuinely cared for each other's well-being. For families currently facing similar manipulation, I want to emphasize that resistance is possible and recovery is achievable. Seek professional help early, document everything, build support networks outside the immediate family, and never stop fighting for the relationships and values that define who you are. Predators like Jessica succeed when their victims feel isolated and helpless. Community support, legal advocacy, and family love are the most powerful weapons against their sophisticated schemes. As Bobby and I continue our healing journey together, I'm grateful for the hard-won wisdom that came from our experience and for the opportunity to help other families avoid or overcome similar victimization. The pain of nearly losing my son to manipulation will never disappear completely, but it has been transformed into purpose and strength that benefit our family and our community. Have you or someone you know ever experienced family manipulation or elder abuse? How do you think families can best protect themselves from predators who exploit grief and family dynamics? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help another family recognize the warning signs before it's too late. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help spread awareness about elder fraud and family manipulation. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about overcoming family crises and building stronger relationships. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from understanding how sophisticated manipulation works and how families can fight back successfully. Thank you for listening to our story and for supporting families who are working to heal from the damage caused by predators who exploit trust and love for criminal gain. Remember that no matter how dark things seem, genuine family bonds can survive even the most sophisticated attacks when we have the courage to fight for what really matters.